Hi everybody and welcome to my weekly cult situation report. I am Daniela Mestenek-Young, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. And it is a wild time to be an expert on the bad guy. I have written one book called Uncultured, which is it's a memoir. It's my story of growing up, born and raised 3 generations into the Children of God religious cult, and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army. You can get signed copies of that attached here, or you can listen to it on Spotify Premium if you subscribe, or anywhere else. I am actually signing, over the next couple of days, 3,300 pieces of paper that are going to be then printed into our own print of Uncultured. That will all come printed, personally signed. I'm very excited by this. Also, kind of fun way to advertise. Once a week, I do a roll-up of everything that happened in the world of cults and in my world of cults. So let's get started. We're going to get to Cult of Maga updates, of course, as always. And I will still not be the kind of intelligence officer formerly trained on and deployed to the Middle East that is going to talk to you about it. So, I have a note here about how the IRS defines a cult versus religion, because people ask this a lot. My answer is that a religion is an idea, and a cult is a group, but here we're talking about religious organizations, right? So, a UC Berkeley professor explains how the IRS effectively distinguishes between the two. Labeling something a cult often comes down to tax exemption status, not fringe beliefs. Which is actually good because, as every cult expert has pretty much said, it has nothing to do with what you believe. It is all about coercion, manipulation, and exploitation of labor. If the group is causing harm but retains IRS approval, it's viewed as a religion. Once harmful actions become evident, the cult label applies. It shows institutional limits on defining cults, right? Like, what does it mean when you actually define a cult? We emphasize the harm, the coercion, and the secrecy rather than the unusual beliefs. And by the way, this is a good point to note that the founder and skinny white woman of the orgasm cult, One Taste, have both been found guilty and of what? Labor trafficking, and could each hopefully spend 20 years in prison. I emphasize this because, once again, it's very important to understanding your cult experience, I believe, to get past the what? They did what? To the why. They did what about orgasms? To get to the exploitation of labor. It is always about the exploitation of labor. And because if you decide to go after a cult, or a church for that matter, going after them for exploitation of labor is usually the best way. As my cult leader taught me, the IRS is who took down Al Capone. This is also a good time to point out that cults are organized crime, right? Because they're all about the exploitation of labor, which is criminal. Mormons looking right at you. Okay. This also raises questions about powerful organizations like Scientology, which regain their tax-exempt status by challenging the IRS decision. In addition, Norway just took away Jehovah's Witnesses' tax-exempt status for their shunning practices, but I believe I heard that on appeal it was overturned, which is a whole huge bummer, because that is basically the way that a country tries to kick a cult out at first, is just making it harder for you to operate here, or less beneficial for you to operate here. All right, 88 children removed from Iowa Bible camp amidst abuse investigations. On June 12th to 13th, Iowa authorities executed search warrants at Shekinah Glory Camp. Some of you have asked me if I've heard about this. A religious rehab camp in Columbus Junction, removing 88 children in response to a distress call from a 15-year-old attendee. And by the way, religious rehab camp, the troubled teen industry, what I call religious prison camps for children and teenagers. Disgusting. Mike Pence is part owner of one in the Dominican Republic. There's a book about it called Jesus Land that we have read in Cult Book Club in the past, which, by the way, you can access via the Patreon. And I mean, when I read that book, it just broke my brain the first time. I was listening to it and I was like, I'm relating from both sides of my brain. I'm relating from growing up in a cult and I'm relating from military training, except these camps are far less humane than military training, to be clear. Do not let Christian religious zealots have your teenagers, please. The allegations, of course, include child abuse and endangerment. The Louisa County Sheriff and State Child Protection Services were involved in the action. Most kids have been reunited with their families, while a few remain in foster care. These are just mini commercial cults, you all, and they're terrible. Investigators are still active with no arrests reported. One church minister's son asserts the camp acted in good faith, attributing the incident to a teen who didn't want... Yeah, okay. Shh, preacher's boy. You'll be unpacking this all in a decade. Unfortunately. Why it's significant a religious group presenting as addiction treatment is now under scrutiny for potentially abusive and coercive practices involving minors, because remember, it is always about the exploitation of labor. And it raises questions about oversight and stuff in faith-based communities, but also, y'all, like, anywhere where children are being taken care of, predators show up. Like, be so careful about who you let have access to your children. And stop, for crying out loud, letting your children sleep in dorms. Stop it. Yeah. This also, everything I've said here applies to like many AA-based rehabs, Scientology-based rehabs. Like, these are all cult experiences, and I believe quite harmful. All right, let's talk about the Diddy trial, because that cult is still going on. Lots of juror issues, one member being replaced because he doesn't actually live in New York, and another issue that is still unclear. Okay, so... stuff is still going on. There's been a lot of chatter about Jane Doe's testimony, with lots of commentary on how she was bad for the prosecution's case and how she had divided loyalties between Diddy and the prosecution team. We've also heard that she seems to have a relationship with the defense attorneys, possibly because she worked with them before deciding to be a witness for the prosecution. We know that Jane stated that she entered a love contract with Diddy, and at the time of the trial that he was still paying her rent. Which, by the way, I just want to say, like, many cults have people sign contracts. Scientology famously has people sign $1 billion-year contracts. They're not actually legal. A love contract cannot be enforced. I mean, lawyers, by all means, weigh in on this, please. But we know he is footing the bill for her lawyer, which seems like a conflict of interest and quite possibly bad for her. But also, we are not lawyers on the Knitting Cult Lady team, so we don't really have expertise in that area. It just raises some questions about like her integrity and whether she meant to weaken the prosecution's case, etc. Also, it's hard to know the mentality of people who are still locked in cult situations. Some of the commentary on this trial has talked about Jane Doe as a gold digger, or said it seems she was a willing participant in all this extra activity because she was and is still being compensated. Yeah, I think people need to understand that there's no such thing as a perfect victim. And this is, we always see this in cult situations. The desire to blame the victim. And by the way, in case we haven't gotten there in our own personal deconstruction yet, a lot of victim blaming is just trying to tell ourselves that it couldn't happen to us. All right. Jane is a pseudonym, and we're not going to engage in speculation as to who she might be. But there's enough chatter on the internet for folks to speculate and suggest on what they know about her, like, outside of this, right? And apparently It says the allegations of gold digging might be true, but I just want to note that, again, like, I think trying to judge people's motivations in these kinds of situations can be very detrimental to understanding what's actually gone on, because people are being coerced and manipulated when they're under coercive control. That's just kind of how it works. But yeah, there's no such thing as perfect victims, right? And in cults, which, by the way, this 100% is, if you haven't realized by me calling it that a bunch of times, all adult members are in some way complicit and perpetrators. This is Dr. Yanya Lalich, one of the most renowned cult experts in the world, talks about how all adults in cults are participants. I believe that one of the reasons it's impossible to predict what's going to crack another adult's brainwashing is because we all participate in our own indoctrination. We buy into our own indoctrination. You really can't see it until you want to. Or until something happens that's too uncomfortable for the cognitive dissonance to survive, right? So many examples of this, right? Reporting or informing on one's friends or colleagues to avoid being targeted by leadership for your own mistakes. Or like in degradation rituals, people attacking each other in circles or group critiques, like AA, right? Or these troubled teen institutes. Finding ways to earn money or status outside traditional jobs, like conning people for food or money, which many, many cults are involved in, right? Because it's always a lie. In the Children of God, we had flirty fishing, which was religious prostitution. And then there's a lot of just like people who go along to get along in situations because they don't want to be treated the way they're seeing the people who don't go along be treated, right? Remembering again too that cults are organized crime. They're scary. My talent manager, who comes from the music industry, has heard some comments about whether Jane Doe hurt the prosecution's case, but she thinks maybe not. She's not a lawyer, but she thinks that Jane's testimony may not have been so much about coercion as Diddy using company resources, like his assistants and his chief of staff, to arrange his dates with Jane and the escorts they hired. Right, so kind of useful to tie in his legitimate businesses to his very much illegal activities. And this is very important in cults as well. There are often front businesses that are kept entirely legitimate. The Children of God had something called Family Care Foundation, and it was literally a nonprofit in California for the purpose of getting government grants to fund this completely un-American, insane cult. So, regardless, takeaways here include the importance of not looking for victims to be perfect, right? Again, adults buy into their own indoctrination. It's hard for them to see that, and it's hard for people to forgive them for essentially being victimized, right? And even I think the way we talk about it, we talk about why people join cults. People join cults because cult leaders build them, and then cult recruiters go out and deceptively manipulate them into the cult. That's why people join cults. They're preyed on for a number of different things about their personalities that make them good targets. But they're in cults because, you know, Jane Doe was abused because P. Diddy is an abuser. All right. And also, nobody's perfect and we shouldn't look up to people as gods, as I hope we are finding out. Just from a lot of things generally. All right, let's talk about Cult of Maga updates. There's been a lot of stuff going on. Sorry I missed last week's situation report, but it turned out to be kind of good because some of y'all simultaneously lost your minds at 10 p.m. on a Friday night when the Marines detained someone. And people were literally demanding that I produce an explanation and an apology for my predictions. Instead, I decided to very much enjoy my 10th wedding anniversary And turns out we realized the next day, on No King's Day, a couple of important things. The Marines were actually just very clearly defining what they would and would not do, meaning the only thing legal for Marines to do on American soil is to guard federal buildings, and that's what they were doing. And they briefly detained one veteran who was on federal property approaching the VA and unfortunately did not hear their commands. I think, again, once that story had developed for 24 hours, it was obvious that there was no need to panic there. So just another reminder, as this week we are panicking about a situation in Iran. And I, as mentioned earlier, as a former military intelligence officer, highly trained on the Middle East and deployed twice, am not going to talk about Israel or Iran or the Middle East outside of very cleared stories that I have in Uncultured. And I think it's a good exercise for people in the Knitting Cult Lady world that find me to be their comfort, like, newscaster. Like, now you're going to have to listen to Aaron Parnas and go find other sources and also just find out what happens along with the rest of us. Predicting World War III is not going to bring you any comfort when it happens, right? We can't prepare for societal level disasters. This is why we say prepare for Tuesday, not doomsday. All right. No King's Day. I honestly feel quite vindicated. I'm sure some of you have seen my videos of saying that, like, I've been saying since Election Day, like, he doesn't own the military. Oh, and by the way, no modern country has gone from democracy to dictatorship without the person at the head owning the military, and he doesn't. And people have said, ha, prove it. Well, I hope the U.S. Army saying, sir, we will burn our 250th birthday party to the ground so that you can't have it, was a good enough demonstration for people. The U.S. Army is absolutely a cult. I've written now not one, but 2 books about it. However, they are a cult led by an idea, and that idea is the American Constitution. There's all kinds of problematic things with the United States Army, but they do not own... Donald Trump does not own them. That's what I meant to say there. So... It was, I think, the best kind of insult because just like probably many of you all civilians were sitting there going like, I don't know what an army parade's supposed to look like, but it's not this, right? So people have tried to explain away various things, but I think we all know. I think we all also saw that 3.5% of the population that we need come out on No King's Day and say, enough, we're not going to stand for this. You'll also be able to hear White Women podcast next week where Rebecca is a lot more skeptical of the effects that it will have. But at least I feel like the energy very much changed after No King's Day, with America seeing that soldiers are not on board with Donald Trump in any sort of large numbers. And they just sort of insulted both the president and the Secretary of Defense, who did know exactly what he was looking at. So I love that. Couldn't happen to a nicer pair of gentlemen. Man, what else do we have going on? He's stomping around, y'all. I'm not going to say much about the Middle East, but I'm going to tell you I don't think they take him seriously either. He's stomping around like a little toddler, and people have pointed out that that is still volatile. Yes, that is true, but quite controllable. One of the things that people have been acting like is he can just do whatever he says and writes down in an EO, and he's basically been successful at absolutely nothing. People were just acting like he could just come in and take over the military by force in ways that's never been done. No, the military very clearly showed that no. So now we moved on to a different chosen panic, but as I said from the beginning, a couple things are guaranteed. He was going to test every check and balance of America. This is what cult leaders do. They test everything. And pushing back is important. Because if you don't push back, that's when they steamroll you. We have maybe not too effectively. We could do a lot better, white people. But there has been pushback. He has been mostly checked. The routinization of America and of the military is holding strong, right? Routinization, building the bureaucracy, is the opposite of charismatic leader who can just yank things however they want. So I think old Donnie is just going to sink deeper into his regime of grift and gulf. And we are going to wait out the 4 years. Hearing about him a lot. But I tell you what, he's been a little quiet and extra taco-y since the parade. So, you know. All right, Culting of America updates. I am supposed to be putting in edits right now, but I've been behind on everything. I am going to be, in the next week, we are updating edits from our sensitivity readers, which has been Rebecca, White Woman Whisperer, reading it from a Black woman's perspective with some good additions. She's also done a great afterword about community versus groups for the book. And then Knitting Cult Mama read it from the cult survivor perspective, and also some Children of God Daniela fact checking. So we are updating the things. We are hearing from the legal read and the fact checkers and all the things that you have to do to make it a good book. So what we all want to know is, when is the pre-sale information, which is very strictly when we get a final text and a cover, which date is August 5th. And we're going to have a very dramatic reveal. More on that when I tell you a little bit about Knitting Cult Family's fun trip this summer. All right. I have gone back and recorded the pieces of chapter 1 that were missing on Patreon. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, I am recording video books of me reading almost final chapters of Culting of America and putting it up. If you are interested in the content of this book before January 20th, 2026, there's 2 ways to do that. One is be a member of my book club, because they're all going to get to read it as soon as the text is finalized. And 2 is be a paid subscriber at the lowest level on Patreon, because you'll be able to listen to or watch it there. So anyways, chapter 1 on the charismatic leader was missing. It is now up there, which means you now have the prologue, the introduction, good cult, bad cult, the army, the author's note about single family cults, 1-1 cults, and internet cults. Chapter 1, the charismatic leader. Part 2, and his skinny white woman. Chapter 2, the sacred assumption, but we're saving lives. And chapter 3, about the mission, do it for the children. I will be recording. All right. Also, yes, we are going to have an audiobook. We have already raised enough funds for that. Thank you all so much. And yes, I will voice it. I also hope to have the book translated into Spanish and have it at least digitally and on audio in Spanish. It will not be the same January 20th date, but I'm hoping to have more information on that once that comes out. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a very exciting knitting cult tour this summer. All right, so we have decided that we are going to get a knitting cult lady RV, and Put some fun decals on the side with a picture of Knitting Cult Lady and the Republican dog style. And also, coming soon, Culting of America and a QR code for pre-sale, which, OMG, some of you have been waiting for almost 3 years at this point. Thank you so much. And in this RV, from approximately July 27th to August 25th, we are going to be traveling from Washington, D.C. to Toronto, to Vancouver, to Seattle, and down to California. We are hoping to have stops in Toronto, I think Winnipeg, Calgary, and Vancouver, at the very least. And we'll likely try to have little Knitting Cult pop-up happy hours and let you all know. Then we are going to spend probably close to a week in Seattle. Definitely do one, if not two Seattle events, or maybe a Seattle event and a Tacoma event. And then we will be driving down the Pacific Coast Highway, hopefully going inland, maybe to see Parker's Permaculture in Portland and do an event there. Probably another event in Eugene, on to, I know for sure, Napa Valley, San Diego, and LA. And we'll know more over the next couple weeks as we plan it. I'm actually going to build out a fun page on my website, www.uncultureyourself.com. That's going to have the Knitting Cult family tour, Knitting Cult Lady Van bingo. If you want to mark places you've seen us. Probably going to give the Canadians a preview of the book cover as we drive around pre-August 5th. But we'll make sure to hide it from social media so that we can do a very fun, dramatic reveal of that. I'm thinking about doing something fun with Culting of America launch, like doing a Love Bomb of the Month collar, where for a certain fee you get a box of hand-dyed amazing yarns and we together crochet a collar. And learn how to make this a super fun jewelry. I'll show you a bunch at the end here because this is what I've been doing a lot this month. I've called this one Dionysus, Goddess of Wine. Look how it jiggles. I know the grapes is what you were looking at. All right, next Wednesday, the 25th, we are doing a pop-up Knitting Cult happy hour in New York City. We'll be at the Gallivant from 5 to 9 p.m. in the middle of our Gallivant at Times Square. I am taking youngest Knitting Cult sibling, who is 22 years younger than me, to New York City, first to Gallivant about town during Pride, and I have been making all kinds of rainbow love bomb collars and exit cost cuffs and selling them and putting the profit towards this experience. Youngest Knitting Cult sibling lives in Texas. He's a trans man, so, doing some good things here, and we're going to have a fantastic time. We're also going to go see Chicago on Broadway, and as I hope we know, Knitting Cult Lady is writing the Cult Baby musical, Veterans Included, and so all of this is going to be research for our trip. Anyway, if you are somewhere that can make it to the happy hour, please come join us. I do hope that White Woman Whisperer might come up and join us as well. And if she does, we might do a little broadcast of her part of Culting of America, Groups versus Community, which I think will be pretty cool. So come hang out with us. I will not be traveling with a bunch of heavy books that are hard to predict how many I will need, but I will be bringing some love bomb collars and other pieces of jewelry if you're interested. But if you do want to come and you do want to get my signature, make sure you bring a book with you, which you can get anywhere you buy books. All right. Podcasts. I have 2 podcasts. One of them is called Hey White Women, and it is me and White Woman Whisperer who sit around and knit and crochet and are deconstructing white supremacy like the cult that it is. I learn so much every week. Definitely please come on the journey. We're pretty good about recording once a week. I also have another podcast called Cults and the Culting of America, and we've taken some hiatuses recently as we've been getting our guest list up. That podcast is kind of like these channels that I do, but with guests. We talk about your area of expertise or your life story through the lens of my thing, which is cults. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast because of your area of expertise or life experience, you can email admin@uncultureyourself.com, and we have a whole process to get signed up with that. It's a pretty fun podcast. Me and my co-host, Scott Lloyd, who's a survivor of the cult of the United Pentecostal Church of Christ and has the most perfect radio voice you've ever heard, have a lot of fun interviewing all kinds of people on there. So check those out. I also have Cult Book Club, where we meet virtually twice a month on the second Wednesday of the month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. EST. We meet and we discuss a memoir. And this month we discussed The Secret Practice by Joel Tamraz. We had a very good discussion about 1-1 cults and yoga cults, which is, both of those are the reason I put this book on that list. I think it's a really important addition to what we study about, especially seeing those patterns outside of the traditional cults that we think of. I have copies of Joelle's book attached here, if that sounds like something you would still like to read. I have also created a video book of myself reading it aloud, which can be found on my Patreon if you like to listen. And then on the third Wednesday of the month at the same time, we meet and we discuss a cult theory book. This time we were closing out Love, Terror, and Brainwashing by Dr. Alexandra Stein, and we had a very good conversation around cults and justified lying and the weaponization of secrecy, how they do it, how it impacts us, and how we have to heal from it on the outside. Next month, we are moving on to The Community by Jamelia Chisholm about the Nuwaubian Nation and for our memoir, and The Sociopath Next Door by Martha Stout for our theory book that we're going to do for a whole quarter. If you are interested in joining Cult Book Club, it is available through my Patreon at the $10 level, and you can find that in the notes as well. It also gets you all the other premium content, like Un-American, which is basically a 6-hour preview of the next memoir that I'm going to write, Deconstructing Whiteness, Power, Privilege, and What It Means to Be an American. You can listen to the video book of that as well through there. I have started preparing for the class that you all have absolutely begged me to host, which I'm calling How You Can Turn Your Story into a Book, a Brand, and a Business. I am starting this by, I have to write the course, and I'm starting with doing a series on my Patreon that's going to be, I think, 6 to 10 videos of me just describing my process and how I did it. That's going to help me wake things up. Then I'm going to write the course. I'm going to accept 15 students to my 3-month course. But book club members are going to be offered first sign up, so I'm not sure if it's going to be on the open market. But the series of me talking about how I did it will launch at the same time and be available for free to Patreon subscribers or for $25 in the shop. And then once I run this course through one time, I very much intend to sort of hire a videographer and make this an asynchronous thing that people can participate in as well. Still hoping to get to scripting the musical this summer, but I had a bit going on. It's a wild time to be an expert on the bad guys. Launching this book. And speaking of this book, we do have a GoFundMe, which is linked in the notes if you are interested in participating. Also, if you've ever purchased a signed copy of Uncultured from me, first of all, thank you so much, and I'm honored. And second of all, you have been investing in the creation of this next book, which comes out January 20th. Put the book party on your calendars, College Park, Maryland. That's another thing I talked about this week, as I hate pitching the fundraiser, but realize I have no problem selling good products. I hate asking people for just to pitch into money. And I realized, I think this is the thing I'm calling fundraising / outreach trauma. And Knitting Cult Mama, who's on TikTok, Grieving Next Door Mama, if you're there, go check her out. Her space helped me put that into words, because we all suffer from hating to fundraise. So anyways, if you are one of the many people who has helped us raise already $4,000 for the book, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Working so hard to get this out. All right, so the date is January 20th, and I am trying my best to have a really good book party launch in College Park, Maryland. I'm hoping to have some religious deconstruction music creators come in and perform and just have a really good party. So if you are someone that likes to travel once in a while, it's better than what happened last year on January 20th. And when we all started living in this particular cult, and I promise you, I'll make some jokes about crowd size. All right, and now for some nitpicking. But first of all, you're about to finish watching me sign this stack, which I started just this morning. And I have just signed my name 1,100 times. And I only have to do 2 more of those. Oh, but it's going to be great. I'm doing our own print, which is very exciting for any author. It's also going to allow me to do this big van tour and not have to worry about being able to still sell you all signed books. And how cool it is to get a book that was printed, hand-signed. I love it. I love the idea. Yay, I just did it. Ooh, that was a big deal. Squinting because migraine. All right. So this is the Love Bomb collar. This is most of what I've been making this week. In addition to the earrings, as always. This is a Kenyan jade necklace that Mr. Knitting Cult Lady brought me from his study abroad, which was basically a Mormon missionary trip, I believe, disguised. Here's some other ones that I've made, and this one that I don't know if anyone will like but me, but I love it so much. Another neon collar attached to this piece of trash that I found in a jewelry haul. I'm really liking this right now because I just take junk jewelry and yarn and make beautiful stuff out of it. Whoops, that one's backwards. I don't know how great this one is, but I keep telling myself somebody will like it. Sounds kind of fun. It's given Brazilian carnival or something. Here we have this one where I left most of the beaded pretty ones out and just put the cloth around one thing so it will kind of sit like that. Here's everyone calls this the Ukraine color, but to me it still just looks like Brazil colors. This one here I'd originally done with a crazy yarn lady outfit, but it was way too fuzzy. So I'm just adding copious amounts of non-fuzzy yarn to try to make it better. But also you're going to be able to stack it different ways and it's going to be basically 9 different necklaces in one. Anyways, I think that is fun. I got some fan mail this month. Thank you so much. All of this yarn. One of you, I have no idea who, sent me these 2 beautiful purples. And the same day that I got them, I had just picked up this scarf again at a thrift store. So the things I will Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much. You are amazing. I'm also working on this dress, which I'm sure I will be sporting at Pride. I'm just like wearing it, but also crocheting it. So, you know, it's still happening. This was a running shirt that I used to wear back in my competitive running days. And then finally, because this will be sent off by next week, many of you have asked me what I've been doing with the fluffy purple and the green. So these, I call them the cult coats. I knit these out of eyelash yarn, sell them for about $300. And in the stage before I put the arms on, because I'm still doing them, I call this the Exmo, because even when it's cold outside, you still want people to know that you're not a Mormon. And I'm so sorry, my Mormon subs from another crypts, that you lost the shoulders, because I know that was your way of like letting people know that you weren't a Mormon. But the tattoos and the coffee still do the trick. Still a tank top, by the way, that says it was never about the shoulders. Anyway, so ultimately it'll have a sleeve and another sleeve, and then I think a green thread all around to pull it together, and boomski. Off to a someone special. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Please feel free to like and subscribe. You are welcome to haunt all of my shops if you would like to purchase a collar. I sell them on TikTok and on YouTube through my shop here. So there you go. We're on the 10th TikTok account now, if anyone is counting. So, you know, come play TikTok Shuffle with us if you're on that platform as well. See you next week. Captain Mestanek out.